Welcome back to Garden Talk, brought to you by the Penn State Erie County Extension Master Gardeners. Again, today I'm your co-host, Mike Bailey, along with Ellen DePlacido. Ellen, hello there.
Hi, Mike. Good afternoon again.
Yes, good afternoon. Hey, last time around we kind of talked a little bit about planting garlic and cleaning up the garden. Now we
Mm-hmm.
want to talk about enriching your garden soil. And we've talked about this, I think, over and over and over again throughout the course of the year, or we try to imply it, how important it
Important it
is
is.
that you
Mm-hmm.
return some nutrients to the soil, because that soil, garden soil, has been good to you all year long, I hope. Okay, by
Yeah.
providing you with nice, healthy plants, and a good harvest. So now's the time to return some of that nutrients to the soil, because the garden's not going to keep giving and giving and giving unless you do some return work. So,
Mm-hmm.
how might we do this, Ellen?
Well, there's two different ways we can do this, and I'm going to talk about the first way, and that is to add some organic material to your soil. And that being a reason because organic material helps keep that soil loose, which means that the air and water can make their way through the soil. And both are so important, not just for the health of your plants, but for those worms, insects, microorganisms that break down that organic material and make the minerals available to the plants. So when we talk about organic material, that would include, again, your finished compost, tree leaves. We've talked about using tree leaves before, but not walnut leaves. Straw, not hay. Hay is full of seeds. You don't want to use hay. Grass clippings from lawns that haven't been treated with pesticides and herbicides, and we do that all the time at Emmaus. And you can even use some composted manure or even some mushroom compost, which we have used in the past. But when you add that material, make sure you dig it into the soil about 6 or 8 inches deep. Okay. So, Mike, do you want to talk a little bit about planting cover crops?
Yes, I will. But prior to that,
Okay.
I want to make sure that don't overdo this, composting, or
Oh,
especially
yeah.
especially the manure.
Right.
I've had some calls over the course of the year, growing season, on the hotline about people, and you talk to them. They said, "Well, how much manure did you really add?" Well, we put it on, 4, 5, 6 inches, and stuff like. Too much nutrients. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you should not do it. You should really kind of keep it down to, a 2 inch max. Okay, and dig it in. You don't want to overwhelm the soil with some of those nutrients, and get a lot of vegetative growth and no flowers and no fruit. That's not
Okay.
what you're after. But
Okay.
but this cover crop that you've talked about, that's really a good idea if you do it correctly. And what a cover crop will do is, you plant it late in the fall, and it starts to grow, and it gets a little bit of a good start. It keeps the surface of the soil nice and green, and holds it together from an erosion perspective or wind perspective. And what you do then in the spring, you kind of dig that in. Uh, and that fresh organic material, will break down, and add a lot of nutrients, okay, to feed those bugs and worms and bacteria and funguses that are in the soil. And it's a great way of keeping your soil enriched by planting a little bit of a green cover crop on that. But you got to be
Okay.
careful, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Okay?
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ellen, we talked about two different approaches here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what would you suggest? Okay, from your perspective, how do you want to do this? Okay, because I know there's something else you want to bring into the picture.
Right. Remember, you have plants that you're going to plant earlier in the season, and then you're going to have your sun-loving plants, your heat-loving plants. So, for those gardens where you're going to do some early planting, I'd probably use that compost or that organic material approach because if you properly prepare the site in the fall, then this area would be ready to plant as soon as the weather and the soil conditions permit. So, for like your lettuces and spinach and some of your root crops that you want to plant earlier in the season, you probably don't want to use a cover crop in that area.
Okay, that's a good tip, Ellen, because
Hmm.
so many people, they want to get some things in the ground early. They want to get that lettuce and that spinach, and so
Right.
things that can go out there when the ground is still kind of cold. They want to get those
Cool.
peas
Hmm.
in, and maybe the onion sets and stuff like that.
You're right.
But if you have to wait for your green that cover crop to kind of
Do
decay,
its job.
yeah,
Right.
it's you're
Hmm.
going to prolong it, and you're not going to get into the ground very early. Uh,
Okay.
but in those areas that are thinking about planting some warm weather crops, I mean, you got a little bit extra time because you're probably not going to plant those until the latter part of May. And in those
Hmm.
particular areas, those particular garden spots, okay, that green organic cover crop, okay, will do very well. But you have to
Hmm.
be careful. You can't overdo it. Again, this is about overdoing it.
We've had
Right?
problems with
Yes,
that, right?
you're right, and other people have had it too.
Uh-huh.
And uh, what you got to remember, some of the cover crops, if you select the right ones, some of them will die off over the winter, which is wonderful,
Hmm.
and then it's easier to kind of dig them into the soil. But some of the crops, like a winter rye, okay, will stay
Hmm.
nice and green, and when the spring weather hits, it'll start to grow like crazy, and it'll grow very fast, and you kind of have to catch it early. And then what you want to do is you got to flip it over, okay?
Right.
So that the green part is face down in the soil, in the hole, if you will.
Hmm.
Okay, the
Hmm.
the, the spot that you've dug up, and it'll decay really well then. But if you just have people who are working in the garden and helping you, and they're kind of turning it over
Loosening it. Right.
loosening it and turning it over halfway, that stuff is going to
Right.
continue to grow and it's going to be problematic all year. So
Hmm.
you got to think about what you're going to do, and if you're going to plant a winter rye, plant it lightly. You
Hmm.
don't need a whole lot. Okay? We've made all the mistakes at Emmaus, haven't we, Ellen? All right?
Yes, we have.
so, uh,
Several times.
so you know, take Ellen's suggestion also about leaving some of those areas kind of semi prepared for an early start, so you can get
Hmm.
some of those good spring crops are absolutely wonderful. The
Right.
radishes and the lettuces and the spinach that you're going to want to get. You could be able to get your beets and the carrots in early, and some onions and peas. Man, I could go on and on,
Yeah.
couldn't I?
Oh,
So,
yeah. Hmm.
Ellen, it looks like again
Okay.
we've used up our time for today. So I hope that was helpful information for everyone. So until next time, thank you for listening.